How's it going, everybody? My name is fallinghurts, and today I want to talk about a game that sounds a lot like it could have been an STD in Salem back in the day. We're talking about Witchfire, a game that has spent over a year in early access, and if you haven't heard much about it, it's probably because it was exclusively on the Epic Game Store for a while, but it's been on Steam since September of last year, and, mathing out from the devlogs and things like that, early access should be coming to an end maybe this year. But I wanted to kind of do a check-in of where is the state of the game right now? So with that being said, this is my Witchfire early access review. If you'd like to see me do a 1.0 review, then, maybe we'll talk about that when the time comes. But okay, you might have clicked on this video and for some reason not know what the game is. That doesn't make any sense to me. But if so, what is Witchfire? So Witchfire is a first-person shooter. It's very dark. I don't know how to explain exactly the style of world it is. Feels almost very Bloodborne in that way. If nothing else, maybe like Dark Souls. And the reason I'm making these Souls-like comparisons is because a lot of people may not know exactly what a roguelite is, but this game is very similar in the sense that you go on runs. As you select which mission you want to go on, which environment you're going to go in and you're going to go with the idea of either maybe farming resources or, completing whatever mission objective it is to continue to the next level in the, I'm going to say quote unquote story. Because with this game being in early access, that is one thing that's very important to note. There hasn't really been a major story overhaul yet. This isn't a game you're going to want to play for the story, although I will say, little snippets and lines here and there is a lot of lore within this world that I can tell. However, I'm going to kind of give the narrative aspect of the game a pass for this video. Only because that's not something that they've said that they've really messed with yet. That said, however, you're going to go into these levels, you're going to farm resources, and if you die, you're going to drop that main currency for leveling up and experience points, whatever you want to call it. And if you go back into that level, you have a chance to get it back if you get to where you were when you died, before, of course, you die again. So it should sound very familiar in that sense. Obviously, it's level-based, as I already mentioned. And a lot of these levels, if you complete everything within them, are capped off with some sort of boss fight, which are very fun and super engaging. Each level works a little bit differently. It's structured a little differently. And I think that falls to its benefit. You might prefer one map over the other, but as you progress further, they each get a little bit more difficult. Loaded with higher intense combat scenarios, more enemies, things like that. So you never feel super overpowered going back to certain levels to farm certain resources and things like that. So in that way, I feel like the game is always equipped to keep you on your toes. And speaking as someone who's put in over 20 hours, yeah, that's definitely the case. So I want to quickly talk about what I think works with Witchfire in its current form and what I think doesn't. Because there's less to say, let's start with what doesn't work. So what doesn't work for me is the tutorial. It does a good job at the bare minimum of telling you which buttons you're going to want to learn to have to press. Being on a keyboard and with quite a few different prompts that you can actually provide at any given point, the game does feel very natural for as fast-paced and as complex as it can be with your build and all of these different modifiers, challenges, things like that. But I will say that the tutorial and introducing you to the game world, I don't want to say that it does a bad job, but it's very unintuitive in its opening. And it falls short of a lot of the other aspects of the game. As you unlock new things to do within the game, a little text prompt on the screen that shows up for 10 seconds then goes away doesn't really do it for me. I mean, there's times where I had to really think about what I needed to do next because, as I will get into with each run, there's not just that upgrade currency that you actually have. There's stuff like gold, which you use to research and unlock new weapons. There's also different levels of writs that you use to upgrade your weapons once you've used them for a certain amount of time, as well as a bountiful number of different resources that you can use to craft incense, which are single uses per run that give you little modifiers such as, each time you defeat an area, one of the Witchfire clusters, gives you more health, or, your health below 25% will regenerate. Different small modifiers that make each run feel a little bit more unique depending on which one you're using. Not to mention, as you get further on, there are different prayer, quests, challenges, things that you need to kind of keep up with in order to make each run as, I will say the key word in this game is efficiency. You know, you need to make sure that you're maxing out as much as you can, both in terms of collecting resources as well as spending them in order to make your character as powerful as possible. And in that way, I feel like that's where the tutorial falls apart. But in saying all of this and kind of setting up the stakes of what you're going to be doing mission to mission, I feel like this is a good time to talk about the gameplay. So as you'll see here on the screen, there is a hub-based area, which is really cool. They've already talked about how in that story pass of the game, they will be adding NPCs and things like that, and I think that's super cool. I can't wait for that. But right now, you're able to make those incense, upgrade your weapons, as well as research new weapons. And another thing that is kind of almost tier-based is you need to up your Nosis, which is kind of like your I don't want to say your intelligence level, because that's not it, but there's this fundamental gatekeeping within the game where as you do certain things, you know, defeat a certain boss, clear out a certain environment, and hold so much Witchfire, the upgrade points, on you at any given time, you're actually going to be able to kind of increase your, they call it Nosis, your knowledge, or whatever you want to say, and that's going to allow you to retroactively unlock new things within each of these environments. For instance, there's something that you can only interact with if you have Nosis 2, which I think you start out with the first one, or maybe you have to buy it. But once you unlock that, you go back to that environment, it unlocks a new pathway or a new aspect of the level that you could never interact with before. Sometimes it's just a secret room with another ammo chest that, you know, provides you with, again, a more efficient way of beating the level. Or it could be an entire separate part of the dungeon which acts entirely differently than how the rest of the level works. And it's stuff like that that makes Witchfire feel so unique and so high quality all the time. Another aspect of the game that I feel that way, I will say this, I was able to test this game on 2 computers because I started playing it on my RTX 3070 PC, which had a Ryzen 5800X, so not a bad PC, especially when it was built. However, I just upgraded to a Radeon 9070 XT, brand new graphics card, went back to Team Red, and I've been playing with a processor, a 9700X. Doesn't really matter as much, but I gotta say, the difference in these 2 graphics cards felt profound in a lot of games that I've tested and played, and while Witchfire always ran well, the difference is I could run it at max settings on the 3070, and I can run it at max setting on 2K, both on 2K, on this PC. However, the difference is I went from using upscaling with DLSS to not using DLSS at all and still getting higher frames than I was. My average, according to the Radeon settings or whatever, is 150 FPS. This game is optimized well, not something that they're waiting to do until the end of development. Crash-wise, I think I maybe have had 2, and both of them were on the last PC, not on this one. And quite frankly, I'm pretty sure that graphics card may be on the way out the door, but who knows. But what is there to say about Witchfire that it does incredibly well? First off, for as good of performance as I was getting, it looks amazing. The environments are super well detailed. The ability for the game world to look different, you know, with different times of day, weather conditions, breeze effects through the trees, and, you know, whether it be a castle-like environment or out in the middle of the woods, this game always looks incredible. The sound design for the game, in and of itself, is masterful. This is a game, I will say, that after a while, I felt the want and need to maybe put in some headphones and listen to a podcast or a YouTube video, something like that. And that's okay because you're going to learn the game, and again, you don't have a lot of dialogue or conversations where it needs to be. But what the game does exceptionally well is it combines the audio and the on-screen visuals to kind of indicate if something is happening off-screen that you need to see. For instance, being detected by an enemy or some enemy charging up a shot. You're going to get maybe a red flash or a yellow flash at the side of the screen, and you're also going to hear this very distinct hiss. And in that way, if you truly immerse yourself in this experience, the game is easily giving you all of the information you need to know all the time. Which is good because it is hard. Witchfire is not an easy game. It's one that has a lot of mechanics, a lot of diversity, you know, plenty of different loadouts, plenty of different light spells, heavy spells that you can use. And quite frankly, there is a need to grind to get better healing, health, stamina. All of these things come together to combine to a point where each playstyle feels represented. And I'm not going to go through all of the weapons. I'm not going to go through everything that's in the game, but there are a lot. Snipers, shotguns, pistols, machine guns, machine pistols, grenades, grenade launchers, shock spells, frost spells, a spell that shoots out a bell that when you hit it, it stuns all the enemies nearby. There's plenty of stuff to see within the game, and if I went through all of that, this video would probably be longer than a run of the game, and I don't want that. You don't want that. Maybe watch some gameplay, watch my gameplay, and I think you're going to be satisfied with what the game is. The visuals are great, the sound is great, the enemies are challenging, they're tough. Even the weakest enemies within the game can pack a punch, and if you're not paying attention, not doing, your due diligence, it could end your run just like that. And sometimes it feels like that. The mini bosses, the more elite styled enemies within the game, they feel like a real challenge, like a real event. And where it gets really crazy is when you're actually fighting the bosses. There is no boss within this game that I didn't feel did a great job. I will say, fighting the bosses in the game, as opposed to fighting regular enemies, it feels like the hit feedback doesn't feel as good. And what I mean by that is, sometimes I don't even notice if a boss actually hit me. Obviously, I could look in the bottom left side of the screen and see the health bar. But the bosses within the game are super aggressive. They're on your ass all the time. Handling how far away from them you are at any given point in time and managing space is just as important as managing ammo and your other resources. So sometimes my mind doesn't think to look down to look at my health bar. And yes, I'm sure there's a slight red flash on the screen, but I feel like an extra shake or something would do a little better, because sometimes I wouldn't even notice that I needed to use my healing items when I definitely had enough that I could have used. That being said, minor hit issues and a better tutorial, of course, and a more fleshed out story would be all I would do to make Witchfire better. It looks great, it runs great, it sounds great, and it fucking feels great to play. This is a great ass game that I can't wait to see where it's at. And quite frankly, a lot of times with reviews, I quit playing games. Once I've reviewed it, I've put out my thoughts on it, I'm done with it. I think I'm going to keep playing Witchfire and learning more of the game until that 1.0. Another thing that I've really appreciated playing from, one pre-update before this most recent one to post-update, they're balancing and tweaking the game all the time to make it feel better. So on one hand, I would say you could wait for that 1.0 release. And a game that I reviewed recently was in early access, and I said you should wait because there needed to be more content, but that's not what I recommend doing here. For Witchfire, I think you should play it as soon as possible because it is a great experience, and unless you're absolutely going to want to play a story aspect of the game, you should play it now, and it is 100% my recommendation. I will stand by this game. I will die on my sword for this game. I love it. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, consider subscribing. If you didn't like it, please don't dislike it, or fuck you, do it. Do it right now, I'm watching. Anyways, consider subscribing. We got some really cool videos coming out soon, especially now that I have this new computer. And yeah, that's about it. Thanks. Bye.